Hey everyone, me Kevin here. We've got new information on stimulus, and let me start by saying the stock market is already green. And it's no surprise that the futures market is green because we might actually have something that could break the gridlock. We could have two new stimulus bills tomorrow that could solve the collapse in stimulus negotiations. This could be a solution. We're going to break down exactly what the heck is going on in this video. First, let's start with Nancy Pelosi. Then we'll talk about the bills and what senators are saying about them. Drew Hamill, who is Nancy Pelosi's press secretary, had the following to say on Twitter today. Now, keep in mind, they released these tweets like 3 hours late, but they did say this today. And this marks a shift here. The Speaker and Treasury Secretary Mnuchin spoke by phone at 4:30 p.m. to discuss the latest developments on omnibus and COVID talks. They spoke for about 30 minutes. This, by the way, has not happened since before the election. The fact that Pelosi and Mnuchin are publicly acknowledging that they negotiated about COVID talks and the funding bill for the government, which is due Friday. That's huge. That's a big move already, but that's not even the good juicy stuff we're about to talk about. But let's finish this out really quick. The Speaker believes at a time when the virus is surging that the need for state and local government funding is even more important, especially given the state's responsibility for distributing and administering the vaccine. Keep in mind, if we pass one of the stimulus proposals that we've already got, you've got $160 billion going to state and local aid, but as a separate line item in the event state and local government funding did not come through, and this is going to be important in just a moment when I talk about the new bills, you do have a $16 billion provision in the stimulus packages solely for distributing the vaccine. So that way state and local governments get money for distributing the vaccine. Furthermore, 3 out of 6 healthcare workers and first responders are risking their lives to save lives and at the same time are at risk of losing their jobs without state and local support. This is true. This is very true. There could be as many as 1.2 million governmental layoffs in the event we do not get that $160 billion of state and local government aid. That could be police, firefighters, county workers, city workers. The Speaker reiterated her view that a compromise on liability should be found that does not jeopardize worker safety. And this is that important balancing act, is if we're going to give corporations protections against COVID, they should at least have minimum standards that they have to adhere to ensure worker and consumer safety. Those have been Democratic sort of counter arguments. On the omnibus, the Speaker raised the recent bipartisan bicameral agreement on surprise billing. This is a little more unique. I'll touch on that briefly, and then we'll get into the new bills. And the bipartisan support for its inclusion in the omnibus agreement, which would yield significant savings to pay for critical health initiatives. The White House has already expressed support for the surprise billing agreement. The Speaker and Secretary agreed to speak again tomorrow. Really good to actually see Pelosi and Mnuchin speak again. I'm going to just very quickly explain what surprise billing is, and then we're going to talk about the new bill. So surprise billing refers to a last-minute bipartisan deal that's been put together in Congress to put an end to surprise medical bills when you have an emergency. Really quick example, and I think this will make the most sense, is when Lauren went into labor with our first son, Jack. She was admitted to the hospital. She's in pain. Anesthesiologist comes and goes, I got medicine. You want this medicine? Yes. Here's your medicine. Boom. At no point was she asked. And obviously you don't think when you're in pain to ask, and sometimes you're not even capable. Well, are you an in-network anesthesiologist? And basically 2 weeks later, we got a bill for $2,000 for an IV administered anesthetic that should have cost us like $200. But because the anesthesiologist was out of network, we got billed as a surprise bill. This proposal, with the bipartisan agreement within Congress, would solve that. Now, that is totally separate from the stimulus talk. I just bring it up because it's something that came up here with Drew Hamill, and you're going to hear about the surprise billing thing, and I just want you to understand it. Okay, now, let's talk about what's going on with the bill. And the easiest way to do this is by listening to what Bill Cassidy says, and then we're going to draw this out to really understand what the heck is changing here. So Bill Cassidy spoke on CNN. Quick note before I play this, check out those courses down below on building your wealth. By 2021, the prices of these programs will be substantially higher, so you'll get the best pricing here in 2020. Check out those programs down below, and also feel free to email me for a bundle coupon at kevin@meetkevin.com. Many of you are bundling up, so I'm sorry if I'm slow on the emails, but I'll get back to you eventually. Here we go.
Millions. McConnell says there's no path for your bill, and Congress should just pass a bill that has no liability shield for corporations, so they can be sued, and no money for state and local governments. which is what Democrats are pushing for. Is he right? Is McConnell right? Or are you going to keep pursuing a compromise?
Well, by golly, if we can pass that, wouldn't it be great? The reality is you got to have both parties working together to pass anything. And the folks on the left say they don't want that. And so, yeah, it'll be great if we get past that. It doesn't seem that we can. We're the only bipartisan game in town. We're the only one where people have come together from both parties and said, listen, I'm not with you on that, but if you give me this, I'll give you that, because we got to do something for the American people. We're going to introduce a bill tomorrow night. Now, the leadership can discard it. I can't govern that. I can only do that which is before me.
Okay, this is going to be very important. He's talking about introducing a bill here, but he says the leadership can discard it. Just to understand that really quickly, this is Bill Cassidy. He is part of the bipartisan group of senators. Remember, right now we have two proposals. We've got a $916 billion proposal from the GOP. White House approved, McConnell approved, Mnuchin approved, McCarthy approved, Meadows approved. That includes $600 stimulus checks. Then on the other hand, we got a $908 billion bipartisan proposal. It's Republicans and Democrats, but it doesn't include the leadership. It's people like Bill Cassidy, Joe Manchin, right? Democrats, Mitt Romney, we've got Republicans in there. These are senators, and they work together with the bipartisan group, the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House. That's the $908 billion one. Bill Cassidy is talking about the $908 billion proposal here. They're going to introduce a bill tomorrow, but it's not just going to be one bill. It's going to come in a unique form. Let's learn about that.
And if we can introduce a bill tomorrow night that takes care of that small business owner, that she's just hanging on, and we're able to give her a little bit more support until the vaccine's disseminated, and the people she employs keep their job, that landlord who's been out rent for 3 months, but now she can get that rent so that maybe she can keep her place fixed up. If we can do that, we'll have done our job. What Leader McConnell decides to do, I don't have control over. I only can do what I can do.
So Bill Cassidy gives us a time frame that tomorrow night we're going to get something. Well, after this interview, which left more questions than answers, we ended up getting more answers. And folks, here it is. There are two things happening tomorrow. The GOP might be introducing their own bill, because right now we only have a proposal for their bill, right? But the bipartisan group with the $908 billion bill might actually introduce their bill as two separate bills. A $748 billion bill, which would include the $300 per week in unemployment pay, and then separately a $160 billion bill for state and local government funding. That means you are now dividing state and local government funding over here with the $160 billion. This would include liability protections as a standalone bill over here. And then separately, a $748 billion bill, which would include, again, that $300 per week in unemployment as a boost, the extension of unemployment for 16 weeks, the rental relief of $25 billion, the transportation aid, the food aid, the school aid, and so on. That would be included in this bill. So all of a sudden, what you might have by tomorrow evening is two separate bills. One bill that is $748 billion that includes these necessities. Another bill that includes the state and local government funding of $160 billion, and some kind of compromise language on liability protections. This is actually going to be very, very key, because right now we do not have liability protection languages in the GOP bill or in the bipartisan proposal. We don't have any sample language. We can only look back at the skinny proposal that Mitch McConnell introduced, or the HEALS Act, and the language in that was very corporate friendly, very bad for consumers and workers. Obviously, some kind of compromise being expected here is going to be very big news tomorrow, especially since by the time we get to the end of this week, it's entirely possible, by separating these two bills, that we could end up seeing one of these bills get pushed through. So we could see that unemployment boost, the rental aid boost, the extension of the eviction ban, the food aid, the school aid, all of these benefits could get pushed through. And then maybe we keep negotiating potentially through Christmas on the state and local aid and the liability protections. That will stand. These two bills will stand to counter the larger $916 billion Republican bill, and potentially could end up forming a compromise here. So we'd actually even potentially have two bites at the apple on stimulus checks in the event the Republicans come in and say, hey, we want to add stimulus checks to, maybe push this one through the way it is, but maybe we'll attach stimulus checks over here to this $160 billion bill with the liability protections and maybe even stimulus checks. Now, the stimulus check portion is totally unconfirmed right now. All we know, and this is just from Capitol Hill reports on a Sunday, that we are now expecting 2 bills to come in tomorrow because we are going to take that bipartisan proposal and turn it into 2 separate bills so they could be voted on separately. Just to look at their text to get a little bit more clarity and depth here. This is their comparison of the 2 bills. This is what Congress is circulating on the 2 bills, so everybody's on the same page. Obviously, the bipartisan one has the unemployment here. That's the $300 per week. Both of them have the small business aid. Both of them have $82 billion for schools. We got transportation money, healthcare relief, nutrition, housing aid of $25 billion, vaccine distribution. See, there it is, that vaccine distribution, child care credits, broadband. One of them has postal service, and the Republican one does not have postal service funding. But that way, you get the green things pushed through, and then you come back and deal with the red, which is the state and local and the liability shields, and then we determine, okay, are we going to hitch either, are we going to hitch the stimulus checks into one of these proposals, given that the unemployment would be part of that $748 billion package. So this is actually a pretty big update. I mean, to me, I'm like, the only thing that could get better than this is getting 4 free stocks for doing literally 4 minutes worth of work by signing up for Webull via the link down below. Deposit $100, they give you 4 free stocks. It's pretty awesome. It's worth at least $21. Deposit $100, that's like a 21% return on your money instantly. So do that if you haven't yet. Link down below, right next to the link for life insurance. Overall, though, I have to say I'm very optimistic about this. Now, I've been optimistic before, so I want to dampen my own expectations here. But the reality is, it's going to be much easier to pass a standalone bill like this because Republicans have been clamoring for a standalone bill forever. Here it is. Here's your standalone bill. There you go. Pass it. It's like sending an email. It goes in the outbox, and then we can continue to negotiate on the state and local and the liability. This, honestly, seems much more realistic than actually trying to get this all together as one big package. So for right now, that does mean that the $600 in unemployment seems to be more likely than the stimulus checks, unless the stimulus checks come around and get hooked onto this state and local and liability relief negotiation, which could be very politically popular going into the Georgia runoff election. There you have the update. If you appreciated the update, consider subscribing to the channel, share the video if you liked it, and folks, we'll see you in the next one.